I stood frozen in the doorway of what was supposed to be my new home office, watching a stranger place my sister Amanda's vanity against the wall. After 6 years of working 70-hour weeks and sacrificing everything for this moment, I was finally seeing my dream home for the first time with someone else's furniture in it. My mother turned to me with a casual smile and said, "The girls need a place to stay. And you have all this extra space." Before I could respond, I discovered my sisters Amanda, Brooke, and Cassie already had keys to my new house and considered their rooms permanently theirs, not temporary accommodations. My home had been hijacked before I even moved in. I never thought owning a home would be so difficult to achieve. Growing up, our family bounced between cramped rental apartments in the less desirable parts of town. My father passed away when I was 14, leaving my mother to raise 4 children on her own. I shared a bedroom with temporary walls made of bookcases to create the illusion of privacy from my 3 sisters until I left for college at 18. College was a financial struggle. While my sisters received support from Mom for their education and living expenses, I worked 2 jobs while maintaining a full scholarship. My advisor once asked why I looked so exhausted during finals week, and I explained that I had just finished a night shift stocking shelves at the local grocery store. He seemed shocked that I was working at all, given my academic workload. "My sisters need the family support more than I do," I explained, repeating the mantra my mother had instilled in me since childhood. "I can handle things on my own." After graduation, I landed a solid entry-level position at a software company. The pay was decent, but the real appeal was the potential for growth. I lived with 4 roommates in a crowded house to save money, often taking the smallest bedroom because, as my mother would remind me when she called, "You only need a place to sleep, but your sisters need space to live." For 6 years I worked overtime, took on additional freelance projects, skipped vacations, and saved every penny possible. My social life consisted mainly of work colleagues and my best friend Jake, who sometimes seemed more concerned about my work-life balance than I was. "Orville, man, you need to get out more," Jake would say during our rare nights out. "All work and no play, you know the rest." "The house is the priority," I would answer. "Once I have my own place, then I can think about everything else." By the time I turned 32, my dedication had paid off. I had saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The 4th bedroom was a luxury. I had promised myself a home office for my remote work days and a proper gaming setup to reconnect with the hobby I had abandoned years ago to save money. Frank, my real estate agent, had helped me find the perfect place after months of searching. "This neighborhood has great investment potential," Frank explained as we toured the house for the first time. "The schools are good, crime is low, and property values have been steadily increasing." The house wasn't fancy. Built in the 1990s, it had good bones but needed cosmetic updates. The kitchen cabinets were outdated oak, the carpets needed replacing, and the bathroom fixtures had seen better days. But it was structurally sound. The roof was only 5 years old, and most importantly, it would be mine. I closed on the house in early April, planning to move in on the 15th. The weeks between signing the papers and move-in day were filled with excited planning. I created spreadsheets for budget-friendly renovations, researched furniture that would maximize the space, and spent hours online looking at paint swatches for each room. My mother's reaction to my news had been less enthusiastic than I hoped. "A 4-bedroom house? What does a single man need with all that space?" she asked during our weekly phone call. "I'll use one as my bedroom, one as a home office, one for guests, and maybe set up a hobby room in the 4th, I explained, trying to keep the excitement in my voice despite her tone. She replied. "Seems wasteful. Your sister Amanda is having trouble with her rent again. And you know Brooke's student housing is just temporary. Cassie's roommate situation isn't working out either." I changed the subject quickly, having learned long ago that my mother's definition of family support usually meant my wallet opening for my sister's problems. Since our father's death, it had been made clear to me that, as the man of the family, I had certain responsibilities, chief among them being financial support for my mother and sisters. Amanda, my oldest sister at 29, had been married briefly to Carl and had a 6-year-old son named Tyler. She worked part-time at a nail salon, often calling me when she was short on rent or needed money for Tyler's expenses. Brooke, 27, had been in college for nearly a decade, changing majors whenever one became too challenging. Her latest passion was becoming an Instagram lifestyle influencer, which seemed to involve taking selfies at expensive restaurants and requesting sponsorship money for products she couldn't afford. Cassie, the youngest at 25, cycled through jobs regularly, usually quitting because her boss didn't appreciate her potential or the work environment stifled her creativity. She had expensive taste in clothes and electronics, but no savings account. I loved my sisters, but their financial irresponsibility had become increasingly frustrating as I worked myself to exhaustion to save for my house. Each time I declined to help with their latest financial emergency, my mother would remind me of all the sacrifices she had made for us after Dad died, and how family should always come first. The day before my official move, I decided to stop by the house to take some final measurements for furniture delivery. I had splurged on a new desk for my home office and wanted to make sure it would fit perfectly in the space. As I turned onto my new street, I noticed moving trucks parked in the driveway and several people carrying furniture inside. My first thought was that there had been some mistake with the schedule. I had specifically arranged for my furniture delivery to arrive the next day. I parked on the street and approached one of the movers. "Excuse me," I called out. "I think there's been a mistake. The delivery isn't supposed to be until tomorrow." The mover, a burly man with tattooed arms, looked confused. "We're right on schedule, sir. The homeowner's mother hired us for today." I felt my stomach drop. "The homeowner's mother?" "Yes, sir. Mrs. Janet Wilson? She's inside directing where everything goes." I walked quickly toward my house, trying to make sense of what was happening. As I stepped through the front door, I entered a scene of chaos that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. The living room of my new house was filled with furniture I didn't recognize. A floral print sofa that definitely wasn't mine sat against the wall, and unfamiliar boxes were stacked in corners. I made my way through the maze of strange possessions, hearing my mother's voice directing someone in the hallway. "That dresser goes in the second bedroom on the right, the one with the blue accent wall." Blue accent wall? I hadn't painted anything yet. I rounded the corner to find my mother standing with a clipboard, looking every bit like a general commanding troops. My sister Brooke was holding paint swatches up to the wall of what I had designated as my future office. "Mom? Brooke? What's going on here?" I asked, my voice strained with confusion. My mother turned, not even slightly surprised to see me. "Orville, good timing. Can you tell these movers to be more careful with Cassie's bookshelf?" They nearly scratched the door frame, bringing it in. I stared at her, unable to process what was happening. Why are Cassie's things here? Why are there movers in my house? Brooke rolled her eyes. "Relax, Orv. Mom solved everyone's problems. We're moving in. Isn't it great? Family under one roof again." My mother nodded approvingly. "It makes perfect sense. You have all these extra bedrooms, and your sisters need places to stay." Amanda's landlord raised her rent again. Brooke's student housing ends this semester, and Cassie's roommate turned out to be a nightmare. This way, everyone wins. I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. "But this is my house. I didn't agree to this." My mother waved dismissively. "Don't be selfish, Orville. Family helps family. Besides, the girls have already terminated their leases. They have nowhere else to go." As if on cue, my sister Amanda appeared from the kitchen, drinking from a coffee mug I didn't recognize. "Hey, big brother. Tyler's going to love the backyard here. Much better than that tiny apartment playground." I looked around, noticing children's toys already placed in a corner of the living room. "This isn't happening. I bought this house for myself. I've been saving for years, and now you get to help your family with it," my mother said firmly. That's what your father would have wanted. At the mention of my father, I felt the familiar weight of obligation settle on my shoulders. It was her trump card, one she'd played countless times over the years whenever I resisted opening my wallet for another family emergency. Where am I supposed to put my home office? I asked, still trying to grasp the situation. You can set up a desk in your bedroom, Cassie said, appearing from what was supposed to be my future game room. It's not like you need a whole room just for work. I noticed that the movers were still bringing in more furniture. How long have you been planning this? A few weeks, my mother admitted. Ever since you mentioned closing on the house, it just made sense. A few weeks. They had been planning this takeover while I was excitedly designing my future home, completely unaware. We should show him the house rules, Brooke said, reaching for a paper on the counter. House rules? I echoed. Brooke handed me a typed document titled Wilson Family Home Guidelines. As I scanned it, my disbelief turned to shock. According to this document, I would be responsible for all utilities, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs. My sisters would contribute when possible to groceries. There was a cleaning rotation that somehow had me assigned to bathrooms and kitchen every week, while my sisters alternated other, lighter duties. Even more disturbing, there was a section about room assignments that listed my sisters as having permanent claim to 3 bedrooms, with me occupying the master bedroom with monthly contribution to household expenses. You expect me to pay rent in my own house? I asked, my voice rising. Not rent, my mother corrected. A contribution. Since you'll be using the largest bedroom, I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. This is insane. I'm the owner of this house. These are my bedrooms to assign. Don't be dramatic, Orville, Amanda sighed. We're family. What's yours is ours, right? Besides, we've already changed the locks for security. Here's your key. She tossed a single key onto the counter. You changed my locks? I felt a surge of anger I rarely allowed myself to express. You had no right to do that. We had to. My mother explained calmly. The previous owners might have kept copies. It's for everyone's safety. I picked up the key, noticing it was different from the one I'd received at closing. So you have keys to my house that I don't have? Our house now, Cassie corrected with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I needed air. I mumbled something about needing to make a call and stepped outside. In my car, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I could feel my chest tightening, my breath coming in short gasps. I was having a panic attack, something I hadn't experienced since college finals week. When I was working back-to-back shifts on no sleep, I fumbled for my phone and dialed Jake's number. Hey man, ready for the big move tomorrow? Jake's cheerful voice answered. They took my house, I managed to say, my voice breaking. What? Who took your house? Are you okay? I explained the situation as best I could, my words tumbling out in a confused rush. Whoa, slow down, Jake said. Your mom and sisters just moved their stuff into your new house without asking you? Yes. They've already changed the locks. They've written up house rules where I pay for everything. They're acting like they own the place. Jake was silent for a moment. That's messed up, Orv. Really messed up. Do they have any legal right to be there? No. I'm the only one on the deed and mortgage. Then they're trespassing, Jake said firmly. You need to tell them to leave. They're family, I said automatically. The response ingrained in me after years of my mother's conditioning. Family doesn't hijack your house, man. Look, don't do anything right now. Come over to my place. We need to talk this through and figure out your options. As I drove away, I glanced back at the house I had saved for 6 years to buy, now filled with my sister's belongings and governed by rules I never agreed to. Through the front window, I could see Cassie on her phone, gesturing animatedly. I rolled down my window slightly, catching a fragment of her conversation. Just a walking wallet who works for her sisters. He'll get over it. He always does. Those words cut through me like a knife. Is that all I was to them? A walking wallet? After spending the night on Jake's couch, I decided to try resolving the situation rationally. Despite Jake's insistence that I should simply assert my legal rights, I couldn't bring myself to call the police on my own family. Instead, I texted my mother requesting a family meeting that evening to discuss the living arrangements. When I arrived at the house that evening, I had to ring the doorbell of my own home. Cassie answered, barely acknowledging me as she returned to the couch where she was watching something on her tablet with headphones. My mother and other sisters were seated around the dining room table, which I noticed was Amanda's from her apartment. I sat down, feeling like a visitor in the home I owned. "I'm glad we're doing this," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think we need to establish some boundaries and expectations." My mother nodded encouragingly. "That's very mature, Orville. We're listening." I took a deep breath. I bought this house for myself. I've been planning and saving for years to have my own space. While I understand you all need places to stay, I never agreed to this arrangement. Amanda immediately jumped in. "So you'd rather have your precious empty rooms than provide a stable home for your nephew? Do you know how hard it is for Tyler to keep changing apartments every time rent goes up?" "Tyler isn't even here," I pointed out. "Where is he?" Amanda looked away. "He's with Carl this week. We have joint custody." Something about her response felt off, but I continued. "I'm not saying you can't stay here temporarily. I'm saying we need clear agreements about duration and contributions." Brooke snorted. "We're family, not tenants. Family still respects each other's property and boundaries," I countered. "I propose a 3-month arrangement. Each of you contributes $300 monthly toward household expenses, and we reassess the situation after that time." The explosion was immediate. $300? Cassie exclaimed. "That's outrageous. I barely make that at my job." "The job you quit last week," I reminded her. "Because my manager was toxic," she shot back. "I'm interviewing for something better that values my talents." My mother placed her hand on mine, her expression shifting to the sympathetic look I knew well from childhood, usually preceding some manipulation. "Orville, honey, I know this is an adjustment. But think about what your father would say. Family unity was everything to him. He'd be so proud to see his children supporting each other under one roof." I withdrew my hand. "Dad would want me to have the home I worked for. Your sisters need this, Orville," my mother continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Amanda needs stability for when Tyler visits. I need quiet space for my studies," Brooke added. "The university library is always so noisy." Cassie leaned forward. "I've been dealing with really bad anxiety. Living alone in this neighborhood would help me heal." Each excuse was tailored to elicit maximum guilt, a tactic I was familiar with but still vulnerable to. "You've changed," my mother said sadly. "Success has made you forget where you came from. Who supported you all these years?" "Supported me?" I repeated, incredulous. "Mom, I've been financially independent since I was 18. I worked through college while you paid for Brooke's dorm room and meal plan." "Here we go with the martyr act," Amanda muttered. "It's not martyrdom to point out facts," I said, frustration building. "I love you all, but this house represents years of my hard work and sacrifice. I have the right to decide how it's used." My mother's expression hardened. "And what will the rest of the family think when they hear you've thrown your sisters out on the street? That you'd rather have empty rooms than help your own blood?" The threat was clear. Cooperate or face being painted as the villain to our extended family. It was a card she had played before when I refused to co-sign for Cassie's car loan last year. "I'm not throwing anyone out," I insisted. "I'm asking for reasonable boundaries. Reasonable would be recognizing that family supports each other," my mother replied. "Your sisters need those rooms more than you need extra space for your video games or whatever nonsense you were planning." For the next hour, the conversation went in circles. Each attempt at compromise was met with accusations of selfishness. Each boundary I tried to establish was reframed as abandonment of family values. By the time I left, nothing had been resolved, and I felt completely defeated. Driving away for the second time from the house that was supposed to represent my independence, I called William, my former boss and mentor from my first job out of college. William had always given me straight advice without the emotional manipulation I experienced with my family. "They're taking advantage of your good nature, Orville," William said after I explained the situation. "And they're using your sense of family obligation against you." "But what if they're right?" I asked. "What if I am being selfish?" "Let me ask you this," William replied. "If the roles were reversed, would any of your sisters give up their own home for you?" The question hung in the air, and we both knew the answer. Throughout our lives, the flow of support had been one-directional, always from me to them. Never the reverse. "You need to stand up for yourself," William continued. "Not just for your sake, but for theirs too. Enabling their behavior doesn't help them in the long run." His words stayed with me as I checked into a budget hotel for the night, unable to face returning to Jake's couch or the house that no longer felt like mine. As I lay in the unfamiliar bed, I wondered how things had gone so wrong so quickly and what I could possibly do to fix it. The next morning, I woke up determined to understand exactly what I was dealing with. If I was going to confront my family, I needed to know the full picture. I began by calling Carl, my sister Amanda's ex-husband, under the pretense of arranging to see Tyler. "Tyler would love to see his uncle," Carl said warmly. "But this is my custody week. Amanda only has him every other weekend now." I felt a jolt of surprise. "Every other weekend? I thought you had joint custody." There was an uncomfortable pause. "Orville, Amanda lost primary custody 6 months ago. Didn't she tell you?" The judge determined that her living situation was too unstable, and she kept missing parent-teacher conferences because of work. This was news to me. Amanda had been telling me she needed money for Tyler's school supplies and activities, implying he lived with her most of the time. "No, she didn't mention that," I said carefully. "That's concerning," Carl replied. "Look, I'm not trying to bad-mouth her, but she's been struggling since the ruling. If you're helping her out financially, you might want to make sure the money is going where she says it is." After thanking Carl, I sat in my hotel room, processing this new information. My sister had been lying to me about her custody arrangement, likely to justify her requests for money. What else didn't I know? I opened my laptop and began researching my sister's situations more thoroughly. First, I logged into social media and checked Brooke's profiles. Her Instagram was filled with photos of parties and expensive restaurants, with captions about living my best life and creating content. There was no evidence of the studious existence she had described to me. I found a post from 3 weeks ago that caught my attention. A photo of Brooke, with several friends in what looked like a trashed apartment, red cups everywhere, with the caption, "Last party in this place. Got evicted but worth it for the memories." The comments section included one from her former roommate. "Thanks for the property damage bill and getting us blacklisted by the management company." So Brooke hadn't left student housing because the semester ended. She'd been evicted for property damage. Next, I reluctantly did something I'd never done before. I logged into our family cell phone plan, which I still paid for, despite repeated promises from my sisters to take over their portions. The detailed billing showed hundreds of text messages between my sisters and mother in the weeks leading up to my house closing. I couldn't see the content, but the timing was suspicious. Taking a chance, I called my cousin Sarah, who had always been close to Cassie. "Hey Sarah, just checking in. Have you talked to Cassie lately?" I asked casually. "Not since she asked to borrow money for those credit card bills," Sarah replied. "Did she pay you back yet?" Credit card bills? This was the first I'd heard of them. "Yeah, she mentioned maxing out 3 cards buying designer stuff. Said something about an investment in her personal brand." Sarah paused. "She told me she was asking you for a loan to consolidate the debt." Cassie had never approached me about this. Either she had found another source of money, or she was planning to use the rent-free living situation at my house to avoid dealing with her debt. My suspicions growing, I did a public records search for my own address. To my shock, I discovered that all three of my sisters had already filed change of address forms with the Postal Service, redirecting their mail to my house. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They had shown no signs they intended to leave anytime soon. On a hunch, I called the storage facility where I had been keeping some belongings during the move. The manager confirmed that someone claiming to be my mother had accessed my unit 2 days ago. She had the access code, so we assumed it was authorized. The manager explained apologetically. "What did she take?" I asked, dreading the answer. "I'm not sure. Our cameras show her removing several boxes and what looked like framed items. My father's memorabilia. I had carefully packed his watch collection, photographs, and the few personal items he had left behind. The thought of these precious connections to him being taken without my permission felt like a physical blow. With a growing sense of betrayal, I searched my email for any communication from my mother about the house. I found a message from 3 weeks ago that I had overlooked during the hectic closing process. It was brief and innocuous at first glance. "So proud of you for buying your house. The girls and I were thinking about paint colors. What do you think of blue for the guest room?" At the time, I had assumed she was merely showing interest in my purchase. Now, I recognized it as the first hint of their plan. They had never intended to ask permission. They had decided my house was their house from the moment I signed the papers. The final piece fell into place when I checked my mother's Facebook page. In a private post, visible only to family members, she had written 2 days ago, "After all I've done for Orville, it's time he gives back to the family. The girls need stability, and his house is the perfect solution. He'll adjust to the arrangement once he sees how much better it is for everyone." The comments section was filled with supportive messages from relatives who had only heard her side of the story, praising her wisdom and Orville's generosity. One comment from Cassie stood out. "Finally getting something back after all these years." I sat back, feeling numb. This wasn't a misunderstanding, or a well-intentioned but misguided attempt to help everyone. This was a calculated takeover of my property, planned for weeks behind my back, justified by a distorted view of familial obligation. The final confirmation came when I called Tracy, a real estate attorney Jake had recommended. After explaining the situation, she was unequivocal. "They have absolutely no legal right to occupy your property without your permission," she stated firmly. "You are the sole owner on the deed. They haven't signed a lease or rental agreement. Legally speaking, they're trespassers." "Even though they're family?" I asked. "Family relation doesn't grant any special property rights," Tracy explained. "The house is yours to decide who lives there and under what conditions." "What are my options?" I asked. "You could file for a formal eviction, but that's a lengthy process. Since they've just moved in and haven't established residency yet, you could simply change the locks and deny them entry. They would have to prove they had a right to be there, which they don't." After hanging up, I sat in the hotel room surrounded by evidence of my family's deception. The weight of years of one-sided sacrifice pressed down on me. I had always believed that family meant supporting each other, but I now saw clearly that in my family, support only flowed in one direction. I called my therapist, Dr. Marshall, whom I had started seeing for work stress last year. "What you're describing is a pattern of financial exploitation," Dr. Marshall said after listening to my story. "Your role in the family has been defined as the provider, regardless of the cost to you. So, what do I do now? You establish boundaries. Healthy relationships, even family ones, require mutual respect. From what you've described, your needs and wishes have been consistently disregarded. I'm afraid of losing them," I admitted. "They're my only family." Ask yourself this. In a relationship where one person's needs are never considered valid, Is anything really being lost if that relationship changes? Dr. Marshall's question hit hard. I thought about the home I had worked so hard for, now filled with people who saw me as nothing more than a walking wallet. I thought about the 6 years of overtime and side gigs, the vacations not taken, the social life put on hold, all to achieve this milestone that had been snatched away before I could even enjoy it. Something shifted inside me. For the first time in my adult life, I allowed myself to feel the full extent of my anger and hurt without immediately dismissing it as selfish. I had spent years being the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who sacrificed for others. Perhaps it was time to stand up for myself, even if that meant being the bad guy in my family's narrative. I checked out of the hotel with a clear plan forming in my mind. This wasn't just about reclaiming my house anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. I called my manager first thing Monday morning and requested emergency vacation days for the week. Eileen, always understanding, approved without pressing for details. You've banked so much overtime over the years. You could take a month off if you needed to, she said. Next, I contacted Frank, my real estate agent, who had become something of a friend during the house hunting process. This is absolutely outrageous, Frank exclaimed after I explained the situation. I've seen family disputes over inherited property, but never anything like this. I need your help, I told him. You know the house better than anyone except me. Would you be willing to meet me there later to assist with some changes? Frank agreed immediately, and we arranged to meet that afternoon when my family would likely be out. Next, I called a locksmith service and explained that I needed all locks changed on a property I had recently purchased. Previous owners gave copies to family members who weren't supposed to have access, I explained, stretching the truth only slightly. The locksmith assured me they could handle it immediately. Jake insisted on taking the day off work to help. No way am I letting you face this alone, he said. Besides, I've been wanting to tell your sisters what I think of them for years. While waiting for our appointment times, I visited an electronics store and purchased a comprehensive security system with indoor and outdoor cameras, all controllable through a smartphone app. The sales associate, Tim, was extremely helpful once I explained I was concerned about unauthorized access to my new home. This model will send alerts to your phone whenever motion is detected, Tim explained. And you can grant or revoke access permissions remotely. I also stopped by a print shop to make multiple copies of my property deed, mortgage documents, and identification, all clearly showing I was the sole owner of the house. Around 2 in the afternoon, I drove past my house to confirm my family wasn't home. As expected, all 3 of my sister's cars were gone, likely meaning they were at work or running errands. My mother's car wasn't in sight either. Frank met me in the driveway, followed shortly by Jake, the locksmith van, and a private security guard named Patrick, whom Tracy had recommended just in case. The property owner should have access to their own home, the locksmith said when I explained I didn't have keys to the new locks my family had installed. Within 20 minutes, he had changed every external lock and provided me with a complete set of keys. While the locksmith worked, Frank helped me document the current state of the house, taking time-stamped photos of all my sister's belongings that had been moved in without permission. Jake, meanwhile, helped me set up the security cameras at key points around the property, both inside and out. Should we move their stuff out? Jake asked. I shook my head. No. That could potentially cause legal issues. We're just securing the property for now. Patrick, the security guard, helped me place official no trespassing signs at the property boundaries. A precaution Tracy had suggested. I'll stay on site until tomorrow if you'd like, Patrick offered. In my experience, initial confrontations can get heated. I gratefully accepted his offer, arranging for him to return early the next morning before my family was likely to show up. My next step was to call all the utility companies. I confirmed that services remained in my name only, and added password protection to the accounts to prevent unauthorized changes. I also contacted the mail carrier for my route, and clarified that only mail addressed specifically to me should be delivered to this address, as no one else was authorized to receive mail there. By late afternoon, the physical security measures were in place. Frank had to leave for another appointment, but not before giving me a supportive clap on the shoulder. "Stand your ground, Orville. This is your house, fair and square." Jake and I moved in essential furniture from my apartment. I hadn't been planning to move until the official date the next day, but circumstances had changed. We brought in my bed, desk, computer, and enough personal belongings to make the master bedroom functional. "What's your plan when they show up tomorrow?" Jake asked as we ordered pizza. Sitting on folding chairs in what would eventually be my living room, "I'm going to be clear and firm," I said. "They can collect their belongings, but they will not be living here. This is my house, and I get to decide who stays in it." "They're going to be furious," Jake warned. "I know, but I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep them warm. It has to stop somewhere." After Jake left, I spent a restless night in my new home. The security system pinged me several times with alerts from the outdoor cameras, but each time it was just neighborhood cats or the wind moving branches. I lay awake, thinking about tomorrow's confrontation, rehearsing what I would say, anticipating their responses. Part of me felt guilty. These were the people I had grown up with, my flesh and blood. But another part, the part that had gradually awakened during this ordeal, reminded me of all the evidence I had uncovered. The lies, the manipulation, the complete disregard for my feelings and rights. Around 3 a.m, I received a text from Amanda. "The key you gave me isn't working on the front door. Did you change the locks already?" So they had tried to access the house in the middle of the night. I didn't respond. By dawn, I had barely slept, but I felt calm and resolved. I showered, made coffee in the single mug I had brought from my apartment, and waited for Patrick to arrive. At 7:30, Patrick pulled up in his security company vehicle and parked in the driveway. I briefed him on the situation and what to expect. "I don't anticipate physical confrontation," I told him, "but emotions will be running high. I'm here to ensure everyone stays civil," Patrick assured me. "People tend to behave better when there's a third party present." By 8, I was as ready as I could be. I had my documents organized, the security system fully operational, and my resolve firmly in place. All that remained was to wait for my family to arrive and discover that their plan had been decisively countered. They arrived at 9:17 according to the timestamp on my security camera. My mother's car pulled into the driveway first, followed by Amanda's sedan and Brooke's compact. Cassie appeared to be riding with my mother. From my position in the living room, I watched them approach the front door on my phone screen, their expressions shifting from casual conversation to confusion as they noticed Patrick standing by the entrance. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and opened the door. "Good morning," I said calmly, standing in the doorway without moving aside to let them in. "Orville, why is there a security guard at the house?" my mother demanded, trying to look past me into the living room. "And why didn't you answer Amanda's text last night? And what happened to the locks?" Brooke added, holding up her key. "My key doesn't work anymore." I maintained my position in the doorway. "I've changed the locks because this is my house, and I didn't authorize anyone else to live here." There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by an explosion of voices. "You can't do that. Our stuff is in there. What is wrong with you?" I held up my hand. "I am the sole legal owner of this property. I never gave permission for anyone to move in. The locks have been changed, security cameras have been installed, and I have documentation of the unauthorized entry and attempted occupation of my home." My mother's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous, Orville. We're your family, not trespassers. Let us in right now. I'm willing to arrange a time for you to collect your belongings," I said evenly. "But none of you will be living here," Cassie pushed forward. "You selfish jerk. Where are we supposed to go? We gave up our places. That was your decision, made without consulting me, I replied. I'm not responsible for housing arrangements you made based on assumptions about my property. By now, the confrontation had drawn attention from neighbors. An older couple across the street had paused their morning gardening to watch. A jogger slowed his pace as he passed. Brooke noticed the audience and immediately pulled out her phone. I'm going live on Instagram. Everyone needs to see how my brother is throwing his family out on the street. She began recording, speaking dramatically to her followers. My brother bought a huge house with tons of extra space, and now he's refusing to let his family stay, even though we have nowhere to go. The patriarchy in action, right? I remained calm as she filmed, which seemed to frustrate her. Several commenters on her live stream actually began questioning her version of events, asking why she expected to live in someone else's house for free. Did you ask permission before moving in? One comment read, which Brooke quickly scrolled past. Amanda tried a different approach, her voice dropping to a sorrowful tone. Think about Tyler, Orville. He was so excited about having a stable home. What am I supposed to tell him? You can tell him the truth, I suggested. That his mother only has custody every other weekend, because a judge determined her living situation was unstable. That she lied to her brother about needing money for full-time childcare. Amanda's mouth fell open. How did you? I spoke to Carl, I said simply. Just like I checked on Brooke's eviction for property damage and Cassie's credit card debt. I know everything. My mother stepped forward, placing herself between me and my sisters. Her expression shifted from anger to the wounded, martyred look I knew so well. After everything I've done for you, she said, her voice trembling for effect. All the sacrifices I made raising you after your father died. This is how you repay me? By turning your back on your family when they need you? For the first time, the emotional manipulation didn't work. Instead, I felt a strange sense of clarity. What sacrifices exactly, Mom? I've been financially independent since I was 18. I worked through college, while you paid for Brooke's expenses. I've given thousands of dollars to this family over the years, money I'll never see again. I'm not turning my back on anyone. I'm simply refusing to be exploited anymore. The raw honesty of my response seemed to shock her. Before she could recover, a police cruiser pulled into the driveway. Apparently, one of the neighbors had called about the disturbance. Officer Rivera, according to his nameplate, approached with a professional demeanor. Everything okay here? He asked, looking between us and Patrick, who had remained professionally silent throughout the confrontation. My family is upset because I've denied them access to my home, I explained calmly. They moved belongings in without permission while I wasn't here. That's not true, my mother interjected. We had an agreement. Officer Rivera turned to me. Do you have proof of ownership? I retrieved the folder of documents I had prepared. Here's the deed, mortgage documents, and my identification. I am the sole owner of this property. The officer reviewed the paperwork carefully, then turned to my mother. Ma'am, do you have any documentation showing you have a right to access this property? A lease agreement, perhaps? My mother faltered. We're family. We don't need paperwork between family. Officer Rivera handed the documents back to me. Sir, as the legal owner, you have the right to determine who enters your property. If you want these individuals to leave, they need to comply. This is outrageous. Cassie exploded. We'll be homeless. That's not my understanding, I said. Mom, you still have your house. And my sisters all have places they can return to. Amanda lives with you already. Brooke and Cassie both have options with friends or other family members. This homelessness narrative is just another manipulation. My mother's composure finally broke completely. After all the sacrifices I made for you, you owe us this. Your father would be ashamed of how selfish you've become. The words hung in the air, revealing the transactional view she had always held of parenthood, as though raising a child created a debt that could never be repaid. "I don't owe you my house," I said quietly. "And Dad would be ashamed of how you've tried to take advantage of me." Brooke, still live streaming, captured our mother's outburst. The comments section of her feed had turned decidedly against her position, with viewers pointing out the entitlement in expecting to live rent-free in someone else's home. "Your followers agree with me," I noted, glancing at her phone screen. Interesting. Brooke shut off the live stream in frustration. Officer Rivera cleared his throat. "I suggest everyone take some time to cool down. Sir, are you willing to arrange a time for them to collect their belongings?" I nodded. "I'll work with a neutral third party to coordinate the removal of their items. They can contact my attorney." I handed my mother Tracy's business card. "An attorney? Against your own family?" Amanda looked genuinely shocked. "I didn't start this conflict," I reminded her. "I'm just finishing it." After some additional protest, Officer Rivera firmly but politely encouraged my family to leave the property. As they walked back to their cars, the defeat in their postures was evident. They had come expecting to pressure me into submission, as they had always done. Instead, they had encountered boundaries enforced by legal rights and the presence of law enforcement. As their cars pulled away, I felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that I had stood my ground, sadness at the broken relationships, but mostly, I felt a strange sense of lightness, as though a burden I had carried for years had finally been set down. Patrick nodded approvingly. "You handled that well. Very calm, very professional. Thanks for being here," I said. "I'm not sure I could have been so composed without backup." "That's what I'm here for," he replied. "I'll stay until this evening as agreed, just in case they decide to come back." I spent the rest of the day continuing my move-in process, arranging for my remaining furniture to be delivered the next day. I changed my phone number, temporarily blocked my family on social media, and emailed extended family members a brief, factual account of what had happened to counter whatever narrative my mother might spread. As evening fell, I sat on the back deck of my house, and watched the sunset. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully feel the weight of what had happened. My family had tried to take over my house without permission. When confronted, they had attempted to manipulate, shame, and pressure me into compliance. And for the first time in my life, I had refused to be manipulated. My phone pinged with messages of support from friends, and even a few relatives who had heard both sides and recognized the injustice of what had been attempted. But the most surprising message came from my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister. "Orville, I've heard about what happened. I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you did anything wrong. The dynamic between you, your mother, and your sisters has been unhealthy for years. Perhaps this needed to happen. Take care of yourself. Your home is beautiful, and you deserve to enjoy it." Her words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. In standing up for myself, I hadn't lost all of my family after all, and perhaps in time, even those relationships that seemed broken now might be rebuilt on healthier foundations. 6 months after the confrontation at my front door, life had settled into a new normal. The house felt truly mine now, decorated according to my preferences, with the home office and gaming room I had always planned. The renovations I had budgeted for were complete. The outdated kitchen cabinets replaced with modern gray ones, the carpets swapped for hardwood floors, and the bathroom fixtures updated to sleek, efficient models. My family's belongings had been removed under the supervision of a neutral third party 3 weeks after the confrontation. Tracy had handled the legal communications brilliantly, ensuring everything was documented properly. There had been no direct contact during the process, which made it easier for everyone. The aftermath within my extended family had been mixed. As expected, my mother had portrayed me as the villain in her narrative, claiming I had cruelly denied shelter to my vulnerable sisters. Some relatives had accepted this version without question. Others, like Aunt Susan, had seen through the manipulation and reached out to offer support. My weekly sessions with Dr. Marshall had been invaluable in processing the guilt, anger, and grief that surfaced after the estrangement. Family estrangement is more common than people realize. Dr. Marshall had explained during one particularly difficult session. When relationships are consistently unhealthy, sometimes distance is the healthiest choice. I still feel like I failed somehow, I had admitted. Like if I had been a better brother or son, this wouldn't have happened. The responsibility for healthy relationships goes both ways, Dr. Marshall had reminded me. You were expected to give endlessly without your needs being considered. That's not a relationship, it's exploitation. Slowly, I had come to accept that standing up for myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary for my own well-being, and, ironically, for my family's growth as well. The first surprise had come 2 months after the confrontation. I received an email from Brooke, tentative and uncharacteristically humble. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," she wrote. "At first I was just angry. But after losing my 3rd job in 2 months and having to move back with Mom, I'm starting to see things differently. The way we treated you wasn't fair. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I wanted you to know I'm working on myself." We had begun a cautious correspondence, eventually meeting for coffee at a neutral location. Brooke had indeed hit rock bottom, which had forced her to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself. "I always thought the world owed me something," she admitted during our second meeting. "Mom reinforced that by always making you the responsible one while the rest of us could do whatever we wanted." Her newfound self-awareness was encouraging. When she mentioned wanting to finish her degree but lacking the funds, I made her an offer. "I'll pay your tuition directly to the school, but with conditions. You maintain a B average, graduate within 2 years, and pay your own living expenses." The fact that she accepted these terms without argument showed how much she had changed. I later learned that she had taken a full-time job at a call center to support herself while finishing school. My relationship with Amanda and Cassie remained strained. Amanda had doubled down on her victim narrative, telling anyone who would listen how I had abandoned my own family. Cassie had followed her lead, though occasional reports from Brooke suggested she was struggling with unstable housing and mounting debt, exactly the situation I had predicted. My mother and I hadn't spoken directly since the confrontation. Her resentment at losing control over me had manifested in attempts to turn other family members against me, with mixed success. Aunt Susan kept me informed about the family gossip without taking sides, a kindness I deeply appreciated. "Your mother has always struggled with boundaries," Aunt Susan confided during one of our monthly dinners. "Your father balanced that when he was alive, but after he passed, there was no one to check her tendency to overstep. Surprisingly, the estrangement had led to new, healthier connections in my life. I had become close friends with my neighbors, the Thompsons, who had witnessed the confrontation that day. Gordon and Helen were in their 60s and had taken a grandparental interest in my well-being, occasionally bringing over home-cooked meals or inviting me to their backyard barbecues. Through them, I had met other neighbors and gradually built a community on my street, something I had never expected but deeply valued. My house had become a gathering place for friends, hosting game nights, cookouts, and even a small holiday party. Jake remained my closest friend, bringing his younger brother Sam around often. Sam was 19 and struggling to find direction after deciding college wasn't for him. I found myself naturally mentoring him, helping him explore career options in the tech industry, and even arranging an internship at my company. "You're good at this," Jake commented one evening after Sam had left. "The big brother thing. I guess I've had plenty of practice," I replied with a wry smile. The most unexpected development had been my relationship with Tracy, the real estate attorney who had helped me through the crisis. What had begun as professional gratitude had evolved into friendship, and eventually, romance. Our third date had been at my house, where she had admired the renovations and noted how much the space reflected my personality. "It's a real home now," she observed. "Not just a house." She was right. Despite the painful journey to get here, this place had truly become my sanctuary, filled with people who respected my boundaries and genuinely cared about my well-being. Perhaps the most profound change had been in myself. I had started a support group for others dealing with family financial exploitation, hosted monthly at a local community center. Sharing my experience had helped others recognize similar patterns in their own lives and find the courage to establish healthy boundaries. "You turned a painful experience into something that helps others," Dr. Marshall noted in our most recent session. "That shows tremendous growth and resilience." On the anniversary of my home purchase, I hosted a small gathering to celebrate. As I looked around at the people who had become my chosen family, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of betrayal had been real, but so was the freedom of finally living on my own terms. When Brooke arrived, now 7 months sober, and maintaining a steady job alongside her studies, she handed me a small wrapped package. "What's this for?" I asked. "Just open it," she urged. Inside was a framed quote: "Family isn't always blood. It's the people in your life who want you in theirs. The ones who accept you for who you are. The ones who would do anything to see you smile." "I found it when I was in therapy," she explained, a little embarrassed. "It made me think of you and what I'm learning about healthy relationships." I hugged her, feeling genuinely hopeful about this new chapter in our relationship. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, Tracy joined me on the back deck, where we had spent so many evenings talking about everything and nothing. "A penny for your thoughts," she said, leaning against the railing. "I was just thinking about the difference between enabling and truly helping," I replied. For years, I thought being a good son and brother meant giving whatever was asked, regardless of the cost to me. But real support means helping people grow, not keeping them dependent. Tracy nodded. "The hardest lesson is learning that love without boundaries isn't really love at all." Exactly. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care. Sometimes it's the most caring thing you can do. As we stood there watching the sunset over my backyard, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for most of my adult life. The house I had worked so hard for had become more than just a physical space. It was the embodiment of my journey towards self-respect and healthy relationships. The path hadn't been easy, and there were still difficult moments when I questioned my decisions or felt the absence of family members who had chosen resentment over reconciliation. But looking at the home and life I had built, I knew without doubt that I had made the right choice. Family is important, but it should lift you up, not drag you down. True family, whether by blood or by choice, respects your boundaries, celebrates your success, and loves you without conditions. It took losing what I thought was family to find what family truly means. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you care about? What did that experience teach you about healthy relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to the channel for more stories about personal growth and family dynamics. And if you know someone who might benefit from this message, share it with them. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope you find the courage to create the life you deserve, surrounded by people who truly value you.